All right, we are live and we have some attendees rolling in. So hello everyone and good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. I'm so excited to be hosting this session today with John Clark. We are going to just give a minute or two for folks to roll in, but if you are joining us, please make sure to say hi in the chat and where you're listening in from. And we'll be doing some polls, and of course we'll have Q&A, so please make sure to use the chat function here. Alrighty. Great. Got some Philly. I'm in Los Angeles. We have Vancouver, Manchester. Awesome. Wonderful. Well, we'll go ahead and get started with just some quick context around what we're doing today and some little bit of background on John. So my name is Sapphire Reels. I am a senior product marketing manager at a company called Pluralsight, and I'm also a product marketing alliance ambassador from Los Angeles. Today we are going to be talking about the strategic role of product marketing managers in creating a customer-centric culture. Today we have John Clark with us. So John, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself to our attendees today.
Hey Sapphire, great speaking to you again. Yes, so currently VP and Global Head of Product Marketing at Here Technologies, but also sort of bringing into this conversation other experiences from BMC and IBM, if there's anyone in the audience from any of those companies too.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you again for being with us today. And so just to start off this conversation, we say, hey, what is the role of product marketing in creating customer-centric culture? Let's level set here. What is that? What exactly is a customer-centric culture?
Sure. So I think it's one that can oftentimes sort of vary across companies. I think every company sort of needs to consider it in their own context. For us at Here, really what it represents is an alignment across the entire organization, but principally the go-to-market functions on who are the drivers and what are the drivers of our business. What informs who informs our product investments, how we go to market from a brand and sales perspective. And so at least for Here Technologies, it represents a focus on understanding buyer activities, priorities, preferences, and using those to inform the decisions that we make internally.
Awesome. Well, great. So we're actually going to start with a poll for all of our attendees so far. And so, as product marketers, the first thing we think of when we're creating any sort of product marketing deliverable or project is what is the core challenge that we're trying to solve. So for our first poll question, I would love to understand from the audience, what would you consider the most common challenges companies face in becoming a customer-centric business? So you should see that poll popping up for you right now with a few different options. If we could just get your input there, we'll chat about that.
I shared my view as well, so we'll see how things match.
Oh yeah. All right. We'll take it just about a few more seconds for this poll here with folks. We've got about half the attendees responding so far. All right. Well, it looks like we're seeing, so I'm gonna, got a few more rolling in. Wonderful. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll here. So with this poll, we are seeing that the attendees here would say it's about a match. So number one most common challenge we're seeing is functional silos, and number two is around lack of data platforms and analytics expertise. Coming in at number three was no common understanding of customer centricity, and the last one that folks picked was weak communication. So John, in your view, out of these, but also there's so many other challenges, what do you see as the most common challenge? And, how do these things work together to create some of these issues companies run into?
Yeah, so very interesting, and I for one, sort of went with the functional silos. Certainly don't take anything away from any of the others. I think that we're, from my perspective, everybody's well intended, in terms of understanding what it is that they can contribute to the overall company strategy.
Hmm.
But very often, what I've experienced is that they have their particular take on what customer centricity means. Um, at times, it can be sort of derived by their sort of selfish needs.
Yeah.
I've interpreted it this way to accommodate my definition of the definition, and I think it's really important to understand that it's something that needs to be shared across functions. We're fortunate that we have a leadership summit once a year. We've had it in person and also once a year virtually, where we share an understanding from our CEO and sort of principal functional leaders. And it was a core part of our discussion last year at the senior leadership level as to what customer centricity represented, so that we had a shared and common understanding across these functional silos, and remove that sort of ambiguity, left some but little room for different teams to build it. I would say that the work that went into that was jointly a product marketing and product management effort, where we actually sat down together and defined what it actually meant. So that sort of is one means of getting past the sort of common understanding and getting to a common definition that crosses those functional silos. We also put dual responsibility within the brand function, our marketing and
Mm.
communications team, and in product management around building it into our activities, building it
Hmm.
into our what we call VSIM, our KPI framework,
Okay.
and did that in conjunction with other constituents like sales, to get that sort of common understanding. Now, lack of data platforms and analytics expertise, I totally agree. Because there are varying degrees. If we think about sort of a maturity curve,
Hmm.
you might start off with, okay, the first thing we need to do, and this is what we did, is undertake some secondary research, look at reports that are available that help us understand our buyers, um, gain an understanding from people that are engaging in the sales process,
Hmm.
sales teams, at both the technical and account levels, to understand what's going on and shape a view.
Yes.
But then what we did was to go out and actually validate that understanding through primary research with actual buyers. We believe these are your priorities. However, we need you to validate that those in fact are. And then after the fact, then measuring, the leads, the pipeline, etc., relative to, in our case, markets that define, groups of these buyers that represent the sort of that customer centric view. So I think all of these are very, very valid, and we faced all of them.
Yeah.
So we're still on a journey. I think that it's something that you should never lose sight of, that it's going to be a journey that you're on.
Awesome. A lot of good stuff there. So, one of the things that you mentioned is, product marketing and product managers sat down and kind of jointly ran this. And the other thing you mentioned was that teams are having their own kind of, not malicious, but self-interest view on this to drive things forward. When we look at prioritizing a new focus in an organization, that often means that people have to make sacrifices and they have
Cool.
to change their focus. And so, can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the sacrifices your organization had to make when any of the organizations you've worked for when driving that centricity, and what advice do you have for others who may have to do that as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me sort of back it up a bit. I joined the company. Let me actually back up even before I joined. So product marketing in our organization was located within the product management teams across a number of internal business units. So
Hmm.
we had many different teams, many different definitions of product marketing, and A question was raised, about the strategic importance of product marketing within that product management construct. Overwhelmingly,
Mm-hmm.
the results were, yes, it's viewed as strategic. Well, why are they not reporting directly to you then?
Yeah.
So the decision was made to pull all of the product marketing teams into a single function, um, and to implement a common approach from within the marketing organization. So not only did we consolidate these teams, we actually brought them into the brand function that I talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I was brought on probably 6 months after that happened. And what I found was that even though we were organized as one team, we were still functioning in very different ways
Yes.
relative, and typically delivering the same kinds of things that we had been delivering when we were spread through the product management organization. And to categorize those, there was sort of like sales enablement,
Mm-hmm.
building and delivering training. There was sales collateral, and that was both sort of at the generic product, but also supporting specific deals in many
Yeah.
cases. And then there was sales support where people were getting on planes and flying all over the world. I mean, I had, ridiculous travel expense that we sort of, I inherited. What we weren't activating was the M in product marketing. We weren't activating this marketing function. So we were getting very little scale out of it. We were getting
Mm.
scale out of our sales function, but we weren't getting scale out of our marketing function. So one of the big things that we gave up was a degree of sales support that we had previously provided. Um, Competitive intelligence was one of those. On-site sort of demo support was another. And
Mm-hmm.
also, as we look to standardize the kind of deliverables that we were providing, instead of having, one team delivering one thing at one level of quality and another team delivering another set of deliverables,
Yeah.
we went to a smaller, um, higher value set of deliverables that the team provided. So that happened. That was met with some resistance. It was met by resistance in the sales organization because they weren't getting what they had previously received.
Yeah.
We got resistance from within the product management world because they were used to having this sort of unfiltered access to resources to sort of produce whatever they determined was of importance for their product. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and what we also had to give up was that sort of deal specific support, like building a presentation for a meeting on such and such a date that compared our product to what it was 6 months ago to what it is today. But what we gained from it was very much more a clear understanding of the opportunities that we were able to then scale around.
Mm-hmm.
So, what markets do we actually want to focus? What is going to drive our business forward as we expand beyond our traditional core market, which for us is around automotive navigation
Okay.
systems? Here's maps are in 4 out of 5 vehicles in North America and Europe. So we
Wow.
had very much a dominant position in the automotive market, but we wanted to grow into adjacent markets to that. Um, and so what we gained from this was a discrete understanding of the markets that we were going to focus on. We got a very clear understanding of the activities and deliverables that we would engage with the sales function, but also now the brand function. So we're able to activate, marketing campaigns, communication strategies, analyst presentations, social media, etc., and orchestrating those activities aligned to these various markets. And even just today, I was reviewing feedback on one of those markets. So we're talking about the last year and a half to 2 years. It took about 6 months for us to build out that understanding and to start activating in a market. But in one of the 6 markets that we're currently focused on, we grew our pipeline by $100 million.
Wow.
So really significant input in terms of seeing that we know our buyers, we then started tracking, okay, if we're trying to get to these specific roles, these personas within those accounts, are we making traction? And almost immediately from the time that we rolled out our guidance into the revenue marketing campaigns, we immediately saw an uptick in the roles that we believed were the economic buyers in our markets, and also those people that reported to them. So we were getting that sort of secondary follow-up into other parts of the buying groups. So
Awesome.
you're giving up something. There's absolutely stuff that you're going to have to give up.
Yeah.
Okay. But at the same time, recognize that it's a zero-sum game. So, hopefully you're undertaking activities that are also adding value. And in our case, we've been very fortunate to have seen, some tremendous return on that investment.
Wonderful. And so one of the questions that just came in the chat, I think is a really great question, is it can be very, and I've experienced this, I'm sure every other product marketer on this call has experienced this, where product marketing kind of becomes a catch-all, and product marketing is so responsive to the needs of the business, like what you just said. Hey, we're going to stop doing this so we can start doing this. How did you actually go about having that type of conversation? Hey, this is no longer my role, and this is now my role. How did that happen? It sounds like product marketing has a pretty strategic importance in your org. So can you kind of speak to that strategic importance and how that translated to these types of conversations?
Yeah, so I think there's two sets of constituents in this conversation. There's the external stakeholders, the ones that used to have that level of support, and you're now saying, hey, that's no longer my role. And then there's the internal resources that suddenly are looking back and saying, hang on a sec, I used to do that every day, and you're now telling me that that's no longer relevant. Okay, so let me deal with the first group and how we dealt with that, and then I'll deal with the second group.
Okay.
So in the first group, it started off by really putting together an operating model that said, here's what our charter is, here are the activities, here are the reasons that we're doing it, and here's sort of the process that we're going to follow. So the first activity was sort of documenting what it is so that you can have that conversation in a meaningful way. We took that conversation to our brand leadership team to say, within my peer group, here's a clear understanding so you all know what it is that we're doing. Okay, and this was also important in part because we were new to the function, so they were all operating independent of us anyway. And so now we're this sort of new group that came to the table, and candidly, there was some resistance to, like, who are you to tell me what to do? Okay. Why should I trust what you're asking me to do? How do I engage with you? So there's a lot of that was resolved through that. Then it went to our leadership, to what we call now called our management team. So that is our CEO and our direct reports. And that's where it was a little interesting because, we started with a top-down approach. We wanted to make sure that management team understood what we were doing and why we were doing it. Then it was really a case of going down into the constituent teams. So the leadership team within the product management organization, and meeting with them. I provided an overview within their leadership team meeting, but also had one-on-one meetings with each of those leaders so that they could clearly understand what and why we were doing it, and ultimately making sure that they understood that we were doing it for their benefit, because they owned products and they wanted to see marketing support around their products. But we were sort of saying, but your product, we're articulating how it solves for a specific need. On the other side, it was also meeting with our regional sales leaders to let them know as to what was done. We then have a sales kickoff and also the sales kickoff, and we had specific presentations that talked about what we were going to be doing. But in that, I did it a little bit differently. What I did was to have a session where I brought customers into a panel discussion. So this wasn't me sort of pontificating on why we were doing things. We were talking to salespeople about the gap that existed between buyers and sellers, and hearing it from customers directly
Yes.
that then set up for, so because of what you just heard, this is the way we're going to do it. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was sort of the, we sort of took a top-down approach to roll that into all of the organizations. Now, within our own organization, that was a little bit more interesting because, as I said earlier, you have people that were sitting there saying, I know my job. I know how to do it well. I've received potentially bonuses around that. And you're now telling me that those activities that are valued by my previous boss, that are valued by my constituents, is no longer either relevant or high value, etc. And in one case, that was a 1,600 slide deck. Okay. And I remember, so we rolled out, with the team, here's the operating model. And for each of the activities in that operating model, we actually walked our way through it in a workshop. I have teams that are principally spread in Europe and North America.
Okay.
So I hosted one workshop in Europe and one in Chicago, one in Berlin, one in Chicago. When we talked about customers and we talked about building a understanding of customers through personas, I got one of my teams and I got them to interview one of our here employees that used to be in the CTO role for one of our targeted customers. So he actually was one of those personas. So we showed the input to our process, our workshop was to basically share this persona and to have the real person there so that they could answer. So there was, here's the people that we're trying to get to. What questions do you have of them? And just left it, for them to ask. Then as we went through it, we were saying, okay, now ask them about some of the questions that you might want to know, like what are your top use cases? What was the driver behind that, etc. So we made it really real for those people that were now being asked to do new activities, how to actually do it, including templates and things like that. And then at the end of our 2-day workshop, we actually had the team read back to that CTO, this is what we took away as the priorities from you. This is the way we heard you prefer to engage with solution providers. And so from that, this is what we believe is an effective marketing plan to approach people that are in your role in your industry. Does this resonate for you? And to give them immediate satisfaction back as to validation that the kind of activities they were engaging in were actually of value to that end buyer. The other element of it then was, as we transitioned people into a new role, their workload for the first 6 weeks stayed as 30%, we want you to do this new stuff. 67%, we want you to do the old stuff. But in 6 weeks after that, we're going to ask you to flip it. And 6 weeks after that, we want you to no longer be doing any of those other activities. So that was how we approach it. It's a great question. And it's got to be well thought through, because if you just come in and say, I've been told I'm not doing this anymore, all that does is creates resistance internally and externally. Sapphire, are you there?
I love that. One idea the product marketing leaders fitting in would find when is, yep. Oh.
Sorry about that, John. I think
no worries.
Sapphire
No, I'm glad. Kind of glad it was Sapphire. I was going to just post and see if it was somebody else could validate that I was still on. So
no, you're still here. Sapphire is just reconnecting now. But yeah, she's coming back.
Here she is. Yes, here you are. Back
all right. Sorry about that. The work from home life, folks. We're all here together. And so sorry. So something you mentioned is this idea. I think this is something we don't talk about enough as, as beyond just how do we as product marketers serve other functions, how do we serve our own team as leaders? And so with this shift to new activities and new deliverables, there's skills that your team has that they're going to transfer over, and there's new skills that they're going to need to have. And so can you talk a little bit about the existing skills that they had that were super critical in building this customer-centric organization, and maybe some of the new skills that they didn't have that you needed them to work on in those kind of 12-week period?
Yeah, I mean, I can very lightly touch on that because at the end of the day, certainly don't want to reflect, have that as an indication that in all product marketing organizations, they may have the same kind of challenges that we do.
Sure.
I would say that number one, they understood the portfolio tremendously. The area that we probably grew in terms of grew most is putting the customer first and saying which of these tactics might work best, or which of these should I focus on, and the sort of guidance that I always had was look back to your buyers, let them drive these decisions, which goes back a little bit to your the sort of barrier of analytics.
Yes.
And we put in a framework around that to sort of look at and see, okay, relative to our target accounts, are we first of all, do we understand who our target accounts are?
Yep.
And funny story, I had one individual, and he's like, yeah, we know who they are. Okay, how many? There's about 40 of them. Okay, great. Have you got a list of them? Yeah. Can you send it to me? Yes. Okay. Next meeting, still hadn't sent it to me. So I'm like, hey, how many customers have we got? Oh, listen, we're no longer at 40, we're at 60. Oh, that's interesting. So you found some more? Yeah. Found some more. Okay, have you got them all, named? Yes. Okay, can you send me the list? Sure. This went on and on. I think we're up to like 1,200 customers now. Okay, companies now. And that was always, it's one of my sort of most precious stories, because what that was evidence to me was simply that they were getting into this understanding that we need some precision. We need to understand our buyers, and we need to understand exactly who we're targeting. And as that transition occurred, it just caught fire. Now they were able to solve for their own questions in terms of, what's my source for this decision? Well, it's got to be the customer. So do we have the data, or do we need to go get the data? That was probably the biggest one. The other area I would say was marketing orchestration. Again, my particular team here, different from other companies that I've worked for, was very sort of sales oriented, product sales, versus product marketing. So that they've learned a lot about the various channels and functions within our organization that can be employed, and figuring out which ones are uniquely valuable for their particular market. So some of them are highly developer centric, others are highly sort of executive centric, others rely upon our existing customer base, others we're going after net new, so we need to, we don't have contacts within our marketing database, so we have to figure out ways to get that. So each person's a little bit unique in what their needs are, but those needs aren't driven by a lack of competency on their part, and certainly not by a lack of commitment or intellect. They're unique because their market is unique, their buyer composition is unique, their product portfolio is unique, their competitive set is unique. So that drove more of a individualized sort of mentoring process because of all of that uniqueness.
I love that. Something that stands out to me there is once that understanding was there, these teams were able to self-service more because they had that deep understanding. And I think having that, I think that's one of the biggest values of product marketing, is having that deep customer understanding. And so when you talked about this idea of marketing orchestration, one of the things that stands out to me is like, how do your teams collaborate with marketing? So can you talk a little bit about the role that collaboration is going to play in that?
Yeah, so that's a great question too. So, first of all, on behalf of our brand leadership team, we have sort of some discrete responsibilities. So product marketing is the sort of primary point of contact for our product management organization.
Okay.
Revenue marketing is our primary point of contact for our sales organization. So then it comes down to, okay, how do we engage with the rest of the brand function in helping to activate those? The first thing we do is we have organized around an agile marketing structure where we have tiger teams, one for each one of the markets that we're focused on. And each market's at a slightly different stage of its maturity, in part because, for some, we've been 30 years in this automotive, IVI world, this embedded navigation world. Others are brand new to us. Others are aspirational for us.
Yeah.
And so the composition is different. So some of the activities that the team engages in, we organize in these teams. We have as joint participants in that representatives from a different agile team, tiger team structure, which is around activation. So our revenue marketing leader for each market participates in that with us so they can understand what the strategy is and how it's evolving. We also have embedded within that team the market intelligence and industry analyst relations. And the reason is because very often we have questions that come up. And so how do we quickly get to solving for those questions? Is it best to go through an analyst and perhaps validate, bounce out our value proposition or ask their opinion about something? Or is it best to actually do primary research to understand that? So that's one way we sit together in a team there. The second thing that we do is one of the outputs that we create, or several outputs. One of them is, here is an understanding of the personas, and it's not just for one persona, here's the aggregate of what all the personas across this market value, prioritize, etc. So that's one deliverable. Another deliverable is an engagement blueprint where we provide guidance, including briefing documents for revenue marketing, for comms, for social, to understand for this market, for these buyers. The buyers come in and out of the buying group at these stages, but also they are best approached at the earliest stage, the discovery stage of the buying process, with these kind of tactics, which might be precise about like these events, etc., or keyword guidance, etc.
Yeah.
And that comes out of that buyer validation work. And then we provide clear briefs in terms of, we believe this asset. So I've given guidance that either in that engagement blueprint, you either point to an existing asset or you point to a brief of what's needed. You never just sort of put words on a slide and say, we need a webinar. So we need to be, you've got to be willing to go that extra mile to give the precision so that our content studio, our social team, etc., can understand what's meant by that. And then our product, these engagement strategists that produce that document also sit within those activation tiger teams to answer any questions that may come up or to provide guidance. But one thing that's clear that we don't do is we don't tell people what they should do. We provide guidance and trust that the social team are experts in social tactics and the event team's experts in event tactics, etc. And that's something that in our brand leadership team, is a very big part of our focus. We act as one leadership team, independent and not as functional leaders that come in together to coordinate.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's something that's so critical, is to make sure that those channel owners and those experts are able to take what you're using and they're able to build off of that. And that speaks to that kind of self-sufficiency and just internal collaboration there. We're going to go to another poll now, folks. We're about halfway through the session here. So something we've talked about before is this idea of who's leading on a customer-centric culture. So I'd love to ask the folks in the organization, which function do you think owns the responsibility for establishing a customer-centric culture? So we're going to start this poll right now. We'll take a few minutes for answers to come in. All right, we've got some responses rolling in here. All right. Okay, any last minute answers here? All right, folks, we're gonna go ahead and close the poll here. So when it comes to which function owns responsibility for establishing a customer-centric culture, the clear and far away winner was every function in the organization, followed by ties between product marketing, product, and customer success. So, John, what is your view on this? Is it a shared responsibility? And if it is, how do folks get involved? Or is there one clear function that needs to be owning this?
No, I mean, I think that in an ideal state, you have every function. I think where we have benefit. So in our organization, listen, I would say probably even before I joined, there was a belief that the organization was customer centric, that we needed, we were already doing that. And so what's different? We're responding to RFPs based on what companies are looking for. So going back to, I think, your original question, what is customer centricity? I think that there's a need for the company as a whole to define what is meant by customer centric or customer centricity. For us, I would say that was led by our product marketing team to provide some precision around that. We were fortunate that our CEO took that on as a mandate at our leadership summit last year and themed the entire organization around this customer centricity, and that we reinforced that as a brand function through the way we comprised the agenda within our senior leadership summit. Also, when we reused a lot of that material for our sales kickoff. So we had now our entire sales function hearing the same thing and understanding what it meant. But sort of holding a mirror up to the company by putting a number of customers on stage and saying, what does it mean to be customer centric? Let's hear that from a customer. That was, in our case, driven by product marketing and our marketing, leadership. We were then fortunate that we implemented a new chief product officer, and he jumped on board with the understanding that we need to be customer centric, but how we were going to be customer centric. And so he adopted the work that we had established in product marketing that ultimately brand embraced, which was this market view, that we have a discrete set of markets that have discrete offerings and discrete buyers of those offerings and solving specific needs. And in his to his credit, he then organized his leadership team and said, I'm going to have, members of my direct reporting line accountable with product marketing, two in a box, to defining these markets. And so it doesn't ultimately matter where it starts. If you see it and it started somewhere, try and get involved, try and have the discussion. If you are the one that's going to champion this, which I strongly recommend if you don't have it, or if it's imprecise, then go and work to build a culture of collaboration and bridge building, which may mean that you come up with a sort of a definitional construct for what a market looks like around a set of customers. But be prepared to release some control, even full accountability for that. And that was our case. We decided as an overall organization that we needed somebody, one person accountable for the revenue associated with every market. And we decided that even though it had started in product marketing, it actually best resided in product management. Now, as I say, we're actually two in a box with them. And they, product management has full accountability. Product management defines the offerings and the investment strategy. And generally, product marketing is focused on architecting the go-to-market strategy and across sales and marketing, not just the marketing team. And you will find that, there's people that are resistant to that because it's going to feel foreign. They're going to be concerned, or they're not going to get what they believe is most successful for them. So you've now got an ally, or you're part of a team. So I had very many conversations where, members of my team would come back and say, John, getting this resistance, we're losing the fight. Okay. And I'm like, it's not a fight. Okay. If you want to use a sort of a battle analogy, is this battle actually valuable to you? Like the fact that social post was off topic. Is social the primary tactic that's going to get to your market? If not, let it go. Is events the primary way? Is that we're not going to the right event? Is that the wrong? Is event strategy the right approach, or is it more digital? Focus where it matters for your market. And then secondly, as it relates to those functions outside, go build bridges. Don't build walls. Go and sit down with them, understand their point of view, bring their point of view into your plan. Now you're going to have them aligning with you, and you may need to give up some of that. And we're still dealing with, a lot of those sort of redefinitions. And I've just encouraged the team to be flexible and not have pride of ownership. Because if we do that and we focus externally on our competition, we can win the war. So forget about getting caught up in battles and skirmishes. Focus on what matters most for the market that you are accountable for, and try and activate that. And anything else, it's just noise. Don't get distracted by it.
Love that. That's great. One of the questions we got in the chat is, do you think each function is important at different stages of defining, establishing, and then reinforcing and maintaining that culture?
Important at different stages of defining. I think that, so yes and no. I think that it's important to build this army. If we stay on that sort of analogy, build the army. So don't, try and build those advocates. It doesn't matter where those advocates come from. Like we had a lot of really positive engagements with corporate strategy, with product management, and in places in sales. We were shifting from a reactive RFP-led, which was our legacy within the automotive industry. They would produce these 600-page technical specifications because it mattered for them. Their cars, if it didn't have that, could drive off the road or drive the wrong way down the wrong road and could kill people. So for that market, it was extraordinarily important that they had precision and accuracy in the map. For other markets, not so much. So we found strong advocates in corporate strategy, and we found strong advocates, partners in product management in places. And so just building on those, as that collective team started to sort of generate momentum and interest, it's sort of, people were sort of looking and going, what are they working on? How are they working? Then we got to a point of basically getting leadership, sponsorship around piloting some of this new way of working with constituents from across the organization, and piloting and proving out that this could happen. And now that's become the model. So are there functions, specific functions that you should engage with first and foremost? I wouldn't say that's the case. I think every organization is different. it was very much sort of sales and product management working together at the exclusion of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
But now that sort of shifted to where, product management was looking at a more proactive model, and it made most sense to sort of embrace the model that we'd started within brand and product marketing. Another big advocate, I would say, as you look internally in the marketing organization, is probably like our revenue marketing team. So, for me, that was sort of first and foremost, because they were creating these campaigns and orchestrating, tier 2 and tier 3 events, not our big, like CES type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But getting them to embrace the understanding of the market and the tactics. And so that was probably the first internal group. That and communications were the first two groups that sort of really came on board and saying, hey, the guidance that you're giving us is really valuable. And then as we sort of rolled out past that, other functions came into play much more often. So
Yeah.
I hope that helped.
No, that was really great. Thank you so much for that. One of the things you've talked a lot about is your strong partnership with the product management organization. And that is very, very critical when building customer centricity, because you have to have the relationship so you build the products that your customers actually need and want. Can you talk a little bit about just your experiences around building that strong relationship within the Product Marketing Alliance? A lot of the times we get a lot of questions around, hey, I'm not able to work with product management or product as a function. So can you just speak to a little bit of like, how did you develop that good relationship at here, but also in your past lives at other companies?
Yeah. So first of all, I just want to say the internal focus within the brand function was the first area of focus and getting alignment there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then it sort of shifted, and brought in product management more directly, and that sort of advocacy and things like that. So, and I had the benefit of, I used to be in a technical sales role early in my career and then shifted into product management. And product management was my path to product marketing and ultimately running marketing for a company that got acquired by IBM. So, first of all, I'd say empathy. I understood their world, and I understood that they were similarly well intended.
Yeah.
So having an understanding of what they were measured on and how they operated, and reassuring them and connecting the dots to say, while we're changing the kind of things that we're doing it for these reasons, and we believe that's going to contribute, in a more material way to your end goal, which is, product revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably the and I had to build trust. I was coming in from outside the organization, for one. So I was an unknown, unproven.
Yep.
So it was really by spending time and showing them the methodology and showing them the the type, because remember, we hadn't actually delivered results at that point. So helping them sort of build some trust in the fact that we're going to continue to be focused on their needs. We're just going to do it in a different way. And then making sure that we were clear about sort of what success we were having in that. The second one is sitting down with them and listening, to like their product was oftentimes their singular focus.
Mm-hmm.
But as we took a customer-centric view, we really had to shift from a product-centric philosophy to a portfolio-centric philosophy, or wide, I should say, not centric, but wide philosophy. So ensuring that it wasn't going to be a campaign around your product, but what we're going to talk to is the market need that exists. And so your product is, to the extent that it is a value differentiator, is going to be very prominent in that discussion.
Yes.
But we need to take the full portfolio, because, and this is my belief, as you look at a buyer's sort of maturity curve, shifting from, say, reactive, I used to be at IBM around enterprise asset management.
Mm-hmm.
reactive maintenance, that requires sort of a work order system, okay? Not a whole lot more. As you shift to you need a front end, I guess, for somebody to submit that request. As you shift to the next stage of the buyer's proficiency, it comes to, they need to now be more preventive in the activities that they do.
Mm-hmm.
So now you need sort of scheduling capabilities. So products grow from, I sold one need and I've now expanded my product to solve for more need, etc. But once you get to sort of the third level of proficiency, they're now looking for stuff like predictive maintenance. Tell me when it's going to fail. Okay. Yep. And now that falls outside of the competency of generally one product. And it fills into sort of, well, we've got to look at the analytics capabilities that IBM has in addition to, say, the enterprise asset management, the Maximo portfolio, and how it solves that maintenance specific need. Okay, so now we've got to look at the whole company. And then to get to the final level of proficiency, it might actually require expertise from outside of your company. Academic institutes that are like, building predictive models for maintenance failures and stuff like that. Or it might be partners of yours that are building mobile solutions, or it might be competitors even. And being willing to take the product managers along a journey to say, we're going to position you in solving for these kind of problems that the market has, but we need to expand and add to your product these other products from within our portfolio to solve for these higher value needs that exist.
Yes.
And we may need to bring in, for instance, partners that are within our ecosystem, or even other organizations that are outside of that, to get to those highest levels of value. So just making sure they understand where they fit gives them a sense of comfort. And then delivering. You got to deliver otherwise.
Critical. Awesome. Yeah. Well, we have about 10 minutes left, so I do have some more questions, but I'm going to pause. Do we have any questions from our attendees? If you do, please feel free to drop those in the chat. We have about 10 minutes left, 8 minutes, I should say. And if we don't, I'll drop back into one of my final questions here.
Come on, what's that burning question? What question have we not asked?
Yeah, that's always the good one, right? Well, here I'll go with my final question here, and if we get any that come in, we'll make sure that we address those as well. So one of the things, we've talked a lot about best practices working internally, a lot of the things that you've done to attack this kind of need. Fundamentally, does this work, and how can you actually know it's working, right? Like you just talked about, it's so important to deliver. How do you actually know if you're delivering? What are some of the things that product marketers can measure the success of actually being a customer-centric organization?
Yeah, so great question. So I think that it's a couple of points. One of them is, I'd say, first of all, you have a fiduciary responsibility to deliver, revenue. So understand that what revenue objectives you're trying to deliver. Okay, because I think that informs a lot. Mm-hmm. Secondly, that's the value that you create for your organization. So having a very clear understanding of what it is that you're expected to deliver, and can really inform how you're going to go get it. Like which buyers are most important to you, then that can define for you what they can help you define what kind of tactics work for you. So establishing that first and foremost, and measuring that, I tend to look at it sort of 2 and 3 quarters out. So not next quarter or this quarter, well, actually next quarter, because you just don't have a whole lot of ability to, in the marketing function, to influence in-quarter deals and revenue. So understand, for that next quarter and the quarter after, have you got enough coverage of your revenue goal? That's a key measure. Then as you look at sort of other strategies that you're conceiving of working, first of all, build your target account list. Like, do you know the name of the company? It's not this generic sort of like, well, we're looking for large enterprises We're looking for this. Get really precise. Put their names down on a spreadsheet.
Yep.
And then start looking and seeing in your marketing operation systems, are you actually gaining engagement from those companies and from the people in those companies that you've identified as critical to your solution? Okay, so we have the personas. We map the incoming leads to those personas to understand how many CTOs did we get? What companies within our target account list did we come from? And then looking beyond that at, well, what worked to garner their attention? You know, is it holding their engagement, or are you abandoning? You know, are they sort of leaving the lead funnel? So think about it. So, you know, the lead is just the start of the thing. As a product marketer, you need to, it's sort of from lead to deal. You know, it's the reverse. Yep. You know, here, same letters, just rearranged. Okay. So you know, try and be accountable for that whole thing. And it may involve sort of digging in under the covers of things. You know, when I was at IBM, we found one instance, leads were being generated, and then the sales team was screaming at us saying, where are all the leads? Where are all the leads? You haven't done anything. Well, it turned out that there was a sales function. So we got to sales. There was a sales function which was only spending 6% of their time on lead follow-up, lead development. And of that, they were sending 100% of their leads to partners because that was their mandate. It's like, well, we delivered them sales leaders where you wanted them delivered, your team. But it took product marketing to go through and see what's happening and why it's happening, and then come back. So those, you know, understanding who you're going, or what your revenue target is, how you're going to get there, are those buyers engaging with you as expected, what's working, what's not working, and then ultimately, as they engage with you, are you getting all the way through to that end revenue that you had anticipated, or are there obstacles along the way that are creating barriers to that success? That's sort of the way I believe and have had success. Now, does it work? So talking about that IBM example, you know, we grew the pipeline by 79% within like 9 months or something like 81%, I think, globally. You know, I talked about an earlier example where, you know, in here, you know, we took one of our markets and grew it by 100 million in a year and a half. You know, huge successes when you get that level of precision. Because now you can have the conversations with sales leaders and sales executives about exactly, did you have a sales meeting? How did it go? Were the materials adequate for the purpose? Were the leads good quality? You can have all of those kind of conversations along the way.
Yeah, that's really great. Well, we are almost at time. Is there any questions or advice and piece of information we didn't get to share with the group that you'd like to pass on today, John?
One of the questions that I've been asked a number of times, both in interviews and in, you know, for my role, and that I've had candidates that I've been hiring ask, is what's the most important attribute of a product marketer? And that, you know, for all of us that are in the profession, for me is an easy question to answer. Be a bridge builder. You know, build relationships with as many teams within the company as you can. You know, we heard about quality being one of those teams in the polls. You know, I co-sponsor our you know, customer survey, really owning it. I lead our win-loss analysis. So getting embedded within the teams and having your teams focus on building those bridges, and always, it's so easy to undo, you know, good work. So just commit yourselves to it, you know, even when it feels hard, when it feels wrong, commit yourself to being a bridge builder, because where product marketing sits within the enterprise, it's the only path to success for the company. So that'd be the only one that I would say.
And that must extend, I would say, you know, to company culture, right? Your company has to be adept at building customer relationships, just like you have to be adept at building internal relationships.
Yeah. I had one of our senior leaders. he actually leads our industry solutions. So this is a consulting group that is made up of external business consultants. They target our biggest customers, our biggest deals. And, you know, I was, every time I was in town, take him out for dinner, and every time I'm there, you know, make sure we spend time together, finding those kind of relationships. But one of the things that he said to me one time that was really, you know, incredibly rewarding, he said, you know, John, you exhibit behaviors that our company wants to become. You know, and so be that role model. Because of where product marketing sits, you're visible wherever, you know, throughout the entire organization. So be that example of what the company wants to become every day.
That's really wonderful. I think that is an incredible note to end on. So thank you to all our attendees, and thank you, John, so much for your time today. Hope everyone had a great time, and looking for any feedback and questions as we distribute the recording. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Sapphire. Really enjoyed it.